We are Future Female Sounds, and we are a non-profit organization, a global community of women medicine DJs, and a booking agency focused exclusively on women DJs. We're actually on a mission to spread DJ culture across the globe to girls and women. And we're here today to do a small tutorial on how to get started. Maybe you're a DJ who's just starting out or you don't know where to start. This tutorial is for you. Alright, so today we're here in Copenhagen. We're at SOUNDBOKS, and we're going to be showing you a very quick tutorial on how to get started as a DJ. So the first thing you need to do is to download Rekordbox. Rekordbox is the software that is compatible with the controller that we're using today. It is compatible actually with most of the equipment that you'll find out there, but any Pioneer standard equipment is compatible with Rekordbox. It's free, so you just need to download that, and then you create your playlist within Rekordbox, and you export it to your USB key. And once you've done that, you're ready to get going on the controller. This specific controller is a Pioneer XDJ RX2. There are several versions of this controller, and there are also lots of other brands on the market that you can use. What's really nice about this controller is that it has a really similar feel to the CDJs, and the CDJs is what you'll find as the standard equipment in clubs. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna start by turning it on. Then you've got your USB key, you've exported your playlist that you wanna mix. As you see, you have two ports. The reason you have two ports is that you can play back to back. So if another DJ is playing after you, they just go on number 2 or 1, depending on where you start. I'm gonna start on USB 1. So over here, you need to select on the screen. Since I'm on USB 1, I'm selecting USB 1. All right, so now it has found my playlist. I'm gonna scroll down to my playlists, and I'm going to select the tracks that I want to be working with. So the first thing you're going to be doing is selecting where you want the first track to go. So I want to start on deck 1. So this is deck 1, and this is deck 2. I always start on the left, but that's just personal preference. You can start on whatever side you like. So you can either load it by pressing the 1 down here, or you can manually click load to deck 1. So now you have your track loaded to deck 1, and then you're going to go back and load the second track onto deck 2. All right, so now we have our tracks ready. We're gonna move over now to the actual jog wheel. So what you have here is basically the play and pause button, which is pretty self-explanatory. Play and pause. What you can do is you can create hot cues that basically help you to navigate where you are on the track. So the hot cues you can actually pre-program within Rekordbox, but you can also create them on the go. So we're gonna move down here to the pads. So as you can see, you have something called hot cue. And basically you can decide wherever you want the hot cues to be. You have up to 8 hot cues. I'm gonna create a first hot cue. I want that to be on where the snare comes in. So I just move my cursor right there and I tap on the button. I now have a hot cue. That's automatically also going to be numbered. So it will go from A, B, C, D, etc. So my hot cue is here. So that's my first hot cue. Now it's really individual how many hot cues you want to do. You might have 1, you might have like 8. A good general rule is to have 1 in the beginning of the song, like where you want the track to drop. And then you can have 1 in the transition, where you basically want to create the mix. Or you could have it where there's a drop, or where there's just vocals. So we're just gonna create a second one. I'm gonna show you how that works. So we go back to our jog wheel. I am using this jog wheel in vinyl mode. As you can see up here, there's a button that says vinyl, so you can activate that. It sounds like this when you're not in vinyl mode. And so as you can hear, it kind of sounds like a vinyl. Now, I personally prefer to use it in vinyl mode. I was trained to mix on vinyl myself, but even DJs who have never mixed with vinyl usually prefer to use it. But again, it's totally up to you. It's very individual what you prefer to use. All right, so we're gonna create our second hot cue. So we're just gonna listen to the track. That's where the bass comes in. So I want my second hot cue to be there. So I just do the same thing again. I place the cursor exactly where I want my hot cue, and then I press the second button. Now, both of these are green, but you can actually program them. You can pre-program them to be different colors within Rekordbox as well. So now we have two hot cues. And you repeat the same process for each hot cue. So now that you know how to use the hot cue, I'm also going to show you the cue button, which is the holy grail of all DJs. All DJs use the cue button. You could also just use the cue button if you are not really into hot cues. The difference between the hot cues and the regular cue, which you'll see right here, is that the cue button is basically stays in one place. So when you create a cue point, it will stay in that place until you move it to another place. So you can only create one cue and then move it around, whereas the hot cues, you can create multiple. So if I wanted to create a cue, a regular cue, I play the track, I want it to be here, I press pause, and I press cue. Now, you probably can't really see it on the screen, but there's a tiny, tiny orange arrow, and that indicates that you have created a cue. So, the cue sounds like this. So, as you saw, what I did is I held it down, and then when I let go, I put my other finger on the plate. The reason I've done that is that the cue acts as a loop, but it actually stops looping the moment you let go of the cue. So, for example, as you can see, as soon as I let go of that, the music stops. So what you want to do is, when you've set your cue point, is that you want to hold it in. So let's say you're doing your mix, you're counting your BPMs, then you hit play, and then you can let go of the button. The next thing I'm going to show you is the tempo, how to use the tempo slider. So the tempo slider is basically the BPM of the tracks. Now BPM means beats per minute, and it's basically how fast the rhythm is going of the track. So you can beat match tracks. You can, of course, also do this within Rekordbox. Like if you wanted to, you could, sit within Rekordbox and try to beat match and see if it works, but you never really know until you get on the actual controllers what it actually sounds like. So I'm going to show you how to use the tempo slider. So we're going to press play. Now, as you can see, I have the master tempo on. I always have the master tempo on because if you don't, you start pitching the sounds up or down. You're also manipulating the voice. So the vocals will sound really high pitched or really low. So you always want to keep the master tempo on. So this is what it sounds like when you're shifting. So I'm going to start by going down tempo. see, while I'm actually moving the tempo slider, the BPM is also changing on the screen. So the master BPM of this track is 100. And so as I'm moving the tempo slider, the BPM will automatically change in here. Now, the reason you want to use the tempo slider is obviously if you have one track that's 120 BPM and another one that's 124. So if you want them to be aligned, you use the tempo sliders to make sure that they're both 124, for example. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to adjust the BPM. We're going to start on this side. As you can see, this track is 124. And then we go to this side, it is 125. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to start by adjusting the track that's not playing. So we're just going to pitch that down to 124. All right. Now you're going to go ahead and, as I said before, you can either use your hot cues, or you can just press play, or you can press Q. I'm going to use hot cue. So what you can do then is that you can nudge the track slightly. You always want to nudge it on the side of the wheel, because if you do this, as you can hear, it really affects the way the beat sounds. So you always just want to gently nudge it to find the right tempo again. Another thing I'm going to show you, again, we're just going through like the really basic features of this. There's lots of fun things that you can do with this controller, but for this particular tutorial, we're just going to show you the basics. So another thing that you can do is looping. There's two different ways of looping. One is by actually using the pads. If you press beat loop, so you go from hot cue to beat loop, you can create a loop within the track. So it's built into tempos. So it sounds like this. So the loop is getting longer and longer the further I go down on the pads. Another way of using the loop is by doing it manually. As you can see up here, this lights up. If you want to create a loop manually, you basically just press play, decide where you want the loop to start. I'm going to start right here. You press in. And out. And that creates a loop. And when you want to exit the loop, you just hit exit. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to show you is how to use the actual mixer. So the mixer is what you see here. So you've got two channels, and each channel has a bunch of different EQ buttons, as well as a filter button and the faders. So you have the volume faders and the crossfader. So I'm going to show you what the different buttons do. This up here is the master level. The master level is basically the level for all of the sound that you're hearing. So from what we're hearing from deck 1 and deck 2. So you don't really want to mess around too much with this one, especially if you're out playing somewhere. They've probably already sound checked, or you have sound checked hopefully, and found a good level. So you kind of just want to keep that at 12 o'clock. The trim button is a great button for basically either turning the volume a little bit up or a little bit down on the specific track that you're working with, right? So everything that's happening on the left side is connected to the left deck, and everything that's happening on the right side is connected to the right deck. So for example, sometimes you might have a track that's not really mastered very loudly or is bad quality. Then you can go in and adjust the volume of that track. All right, so I'm gonna show you what the trim button does. It sounds like this. So you never want to go in the red. You want to try to keep out at the red. A lot of times the trim button is really just minor adjustments, right? And a small adjustment can make a big difference to the volume of the track. The next button I'm going to show you is the high pass. It sounds like this. So it's kind of like you're opening and closing the track. The high pass is typically used when you're transitioning from one track to another. The next button I'm going to show you is the mid. So the mid is more like kind of like you're going down to the basement and coming up again. So the mid is also really nice button to play around with when you're doing transitions. And the last button I'm going to show you is the bass, the low pass, and it sounds like this. Basically cutting the bass completely off. And again, the bass could also be used during a transition, for example. And it's very individual, again, how you use the bass. If you actually all of the buttons, if you slightly adjust them, or if you cut them and open them, it really depends on your mixing style. There isn't like a right way or a wrong way to use the buttons. There also isn't a right or a wrong way to DJ. It's 100% an individual artistic expression. All right, so I'm gonna cut the bass. You can hear once again. Okay. The last thing I'm going to show you today are the filter buttons. The filter buttons are just fun elements that you can add into your mix. I'm going to show you basically how you activate them. So you play the track. So you go over here on the side and you select filter, and then you're going to use this particular EQ, which is called color. And then you've got plenty of different filters that can be fun to use. Filter buttons are really just kind of fun to play around with. The last one that you also have, which you'll also find on any kind of CDJ and mixer setup, is this button right here. Basically you have to choose on which side you want filter to be. So because I'm working on deck 1, I'm going to choose 1. I have chosen echo. You basically need to turn the filter on. So I'm going to turn the music up and activate the filter. Now you can turn this up and down to determine how much of an effect you want. obviously want to mix with your headphones, you can use whatever headphones on the market. Like if you're just getting started, you don't have to invest in really, really expensive headphones. Just get something that's close around your ears. You plug in your headphones, and the way that you use your headphones when you're mixing is that you cue the sound in your headphones. So you have a button here called cue. You have it on deck 1 and on deck 2. So depending on what you prefer, if you prefer to hear both tracks at the same time, you would have cue turned on both on deck 1 and on deck 2. If you prefer to only listen to the song that you're about to mix, so we're on this side, so let's say I only want to hear this track in my headphones, then I would cue it on 2. With your headphones, you also have a level, so you can turn the level up and down, and you also have a cue and master, so you can decide how much of the sound you want to pan within your headphones. Thanks for tuning in to this tutorial for beginners. Follow Future Female Sounds on our social media and join our global community of women